Hello everyone! Welcome to Module 1, where we define added sugar. This lesson is the foundation for our entire challenge. But before we get into the exciting stuff, I want to be very clear about the purpose of this challenge. I am not saying that sugar is bad. Let me say that again. I am not saying that sugar is bad. I know I mentioned this in the intro video, but because I have so many clients who come into my office repeating misinformation about sugar, I want to bring it up again. Sugar is not bad. In my practice, it's actually pretty rare for me to call any food good or bad. I am a sugar lover, and I believe it can and should fit into a healthy diet. Foods that are sweet play an important role in the enjoyment of food because food should be pleasurable. So my purpose for creating this challenge is to bring awareness to parts of your diet that may have added sugar that you didn't even know about, and to diversify your taste palette. I want you to be an educated consumer about sugar. You will enjoy food so much more when you give yourself the permission to eat sugar. I know I've said this before, but I really don't want you to get the wrong idea of sugar. So I'll get off my soapbox and walk you through how we define added sugar and identify places that it may be hiding. Nutrition science is based in chemistry, so I couldn't help but include the molecular model of a sugar molecule. I'm kind of a nerd and I'm not afraid to admit it. This happens to be the molecular model for sucrose, otherwise known as table sugar, which is what most people think of when they hear the term sugar. But it's important to remember that sugar comes in many different forms. Now, I'll spare you the nerdy details for now, but for our purposes today, I wanted to show you the components of sugar, which is made up of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen molecules. Sugar is officially defined as a sweet crystalline substance that is obtained from various plants. Sugar is often synonymous with sweet. There's a large diversity of how sugar presents itself in nature. So I pulled these three monosaccharides, otherwise known as simple sugars, as examples. These molecules may occur by themselves, like in the case of fructose, which is the main sugar in fruit and honey, or glucose, which is found in fruits, grains, and veggies. If we were to combine the molecules of glucose and fructose, we'd get sucrose, which is the sugar molecule I showed you in the last slide. The combination of glucose and galactose makes up the primary milk sugar called lactose. I'm sure you've heard of that one. There are so many examples of combinations of sugars that it would make your head spin. We could get real nerdy and talk about these combinations all day, but let's talk about the important difference between natural versus added sugar next. Nutrition is super interesting because we know that sugar occurs naturally in whole foods, just as I showed you, but nutrition scientists can also manufacture sugar in the lab. So it's important to make the distinction between natural versus added sugar before we get too far in this challenge. Natural sugar is found in whole, unprocessed foods such as fruits and veggies. You have all experienced the joy of natural sugar when you bite into a juicy apple or a sweet slice of watermelon. That is the taste of sugar at its finest. So that's not the kind of sugar that we are seeking to limit with our challenge, because it comes along with all the vitamins, minerals, and fiber from the fruit or the vegetable. On the other hand, we define added sugar as the type that is added to foods during processing, cooking, or before eating. This can come in many forms and be added for many different reasons. Some of those reasons include sweetness, which is the obvious answer, preservation, texture, color, like you think of caramel, and viscosity or thickness. Remember that not all food manufacturers have bad intentions when they add sugar to their products. They may simply be adding sugar so that they can give you a better final product. But the problem that we are seeing is that sugar or other sweeteners have found their way into so many foods that collectively, we of Americans are getting too much added sugar in our diet. There are some negative health outcomes that have accompanied this trend, including weight gain, cardiovascular diseases, and diabetes, just to name a few. This sparked a big debate, and the spotlight is now on sugar as the bad guy, and even led to national policy changes to include added sugar on nutrition facts labels, which we'll talk about in a minute. We'll talk about the health concerns of too much added sugar in another module. Like I mentioned, sugar can be added to all kinds of foods for many different reasons. We see added sugar pop up in packaged foods like the ones listed here. This list is obviously not fully comprehensive, so you'll have to pay attention to the ingredients list. I just wanted to bring your attention to a few things that you may not have thought of that contain a lot of sugar. In the pantry and cupboard list, we're not really surprised to see that baked goods, candy, cereal, and cookies, and dried fruit have a lot of sugar because they're sweet. But notice that granola and oatmeal packets have added sugar. Maybe that's not a surprise because those foods are pretty well known for their sweetness factor. But did you see that many sauces like marinara sauce has added sugar? Sugar is actually added to cut the acidity of the tomatoes, but yet another source of added sugar that you maybe didn't plan on. Even some seasonings or ready-to-make meat rubs have added sugar. You will also be surprised that when you pull out the condiments from your refrigerator, items like barbecue sauce, ketchup, and salad dressings have more added sugar than you'd think. Also consider taking a look at added sugar in your favorite protein bar. Here's a fun fact. Added sugar is hiding in 74% of packaged foods. It used to be easy to find sugar on the ingredient labels. Those were the days. This is because in chemistry, molecules ending in "-ose" designates sugar, like sucrose, glucose, fructose, and on and on. But the food industry is sneaky. They've been using sugar, but using different names for sugar because they can manipulate the sweetness and consistency of foods by selecting sweeteners in different forms. So here's a list of 61 different names for sugar that you might see on the ingredient labels. This sounds a little bit overwhelming, but I have some good news for you. Number one, we can see trends in some of the names for these sugars like syrup, words that end in "-ose", and sugar. Those are easy to identify as added sugar. And number two, in 2016, the USDA proposed a new nutrition facts label that requires manufacturers to list the amount of added sugar in their product. And here's that new nutrition facts label. You can see under the total sugars, the amount of added sugar for this particular product is 10 grams. So we could say that for this food has 2 grams of natural sugar and 10 grams of added sugar. This is a game changer for our added sugar challenge because we will easily be able to tell the amount of added sugar in a product. Unfortunately, the new labeling laws will take some time to implement, so not all foods are going to list this just yet, although there are many foods on the market that have the new label. Manufacturers will be required to have these new labels by July 2021 at the latest, and many are required to have these new labels earlier. I encourage you to get comfortable reading both nutrition facts labels and the ingredient label. I've highlighted the sugars in this ingredient list, which happens to be for a Cliff Bar. You can see the trend I mentioned with syrup and sugar as the common denominator in these long words, like organic brown rice syrup and organic cane sugar, or cane syrup and organic cane sugar. A piece of cake. So now you are up to date on the new labeling laws, and you now know what and where to look for that sneaky added sugar. Hopefully at this point you are also able to tell your friends the difference between natural and added sugars and what foods may have hidden sugar. In the next module, we're going to discuss how much sugar you might need.